Great news, everybody. We've made it to Manger Day. We are really, really close to the celebration of Christmas. And as we get in these last final days, we're adding in our last final details of the picture. We've been drawing since way, way, way back at the beginning of Advent. Can you remember way, way back there when we started with just a blank page and then we wrote the word God right at the center of our page? Well, today, we're going to be adding in the manger, the very, very spot where they laid the baby Jesus. When Luke tells the story, he says that Mary and Joseph have traveled away from their home in Nazareth to Bethlehem, where their ancestors were from, because of Caesar's census, and because they don't own a house there. They're just sort of borrowing a spot, and the only place they can find to lay their baby isn't a fancy, specially made crib or cradle, but the borrowed food trough, where the animals would have eaten their food out of, or maybe drunk water out of. So we're going to be adding that in today. You can tell that means we're getting very, very close to actually putting Jesus in our picture, so that our story, if you've been following along, begins and ends with God, right? It started out with the word God, literally written on the page. We're going to be ending our drawing picture with Jesus himself finally arriving at the center of the picture, but we need a place to lay him, right? So just like Mary had to find a place to lay her child, we'll draw that in. So come in close, and I'm going to show you how we're going to draw in our manger for our drawing scene. So last time we put in this sort of roadway leading the way, bringing us all the way from the Magi far, far away through the city of Bethlehem and right here to where Jesus is going to be laid. So we're going to make ourselves a manger. Now, if we were back in Bible times, there's a good chance that a manger you'd feed animals with could be just sort of dug out of whatever cave or underground structure or rock you were building your house on. It could have been carved out of a separate piece of stone or limestone. There's plenty of limestone around in ancient Israel, but it's also possible, I suppose, that it could have been constructed out of wood. For our purposes, we're going to make something that kind of looks simple and kind of looks like it's made out of wood. But again, we're using our faithful imagination here. One day when we get to glory, if Jesus sits us down and says, you know what, it turns out the manger is made of stone or rock, it's going to be okay. The idea here is to help us to have a picture in mind of what it is that's going on here. So we're going to do this sort of like this. We're first going to draw two lines going this way, and we're going to connect them, okay, like that. And then we're going to draw two lines like this, suggesting that you've got wood slats that are going to be holding something over here. Now, we all know spoiler alert, that's where Jesus is going to go. But we're going to fill in a little bit of straw, and to do that, we're just going to draw some just sort of loose lines like that, like they've put some hay or straw. Let's imagine this is the manger the animals would have eaten out of, not drunk water out of, although they might have had both. And later on when we get to coloring that in, we might put in some colors that make it look like straw for us. Now, you want to go for extra credit. We can make this look even more realistic. We can put a couple of nails right there. And then if you really want to get fancy, we can draw some light wavy lines to suggest wood grain. Now, you don't have to. We don't want to get too focused on this, but at least to suggest this is something that's made out of wood. And when we get around to coloring this later, we might want to color that in to make it look like it's wood against all the other colors that are going on there. But again, the idea here is to focus when Mary and Joseph come to Bethlehem, because the census has forced them to go to the town of their ancestry. They go to Bethlehem. They don't own a place there, so they're just finding any place they can find to stay and to have a place to have the baby and to lay it, so they borrow the food trough. So the animals we drew in earlier, that cow over there, we're going to imagine that cow gave up her food trough for the night so that baby Jesus could be laid there. So that tells you tomorrow's finally the day we're going to be adding in Jesus into our picture, so that we begin and we end with Jesus, we end with God as the beginning and the end of the story of Christmas. But we're almost ready now that we've got our manger in. Thanks so much for being along on the journey with us today. See ya.